spotlight.
Wow.
Hello.
Going.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, getting
All right.
a little bit.
Hear me a little bit. We're going to start this meeting, and I thank everybody for being here. I'm Senator Jim Bell, and welcome to our public safety event. We're really happy that you took time out on this lovely day to come down here for, we're hopeful to be about an hour and a half of discussion. I'd like to thank Westgate. Thank you, Westgate, for hosting us. A lovely facility and service for us, and we really appreciate it. I want to also thank, co-joined by my co-hosts, we have Assembly members Evan Lowe, Mark Stone over here, and we have the irrepressible Johnny Camus over here, City Council member from Almaden Valley. And we're all here because keeping our neighborhoods safe is a shared priority, and we're going to work together to combat crime and talk about the subject today for a little bit with you. We also have with us some state and local experts, and they're going to discuss some of the specific programs that are new and established under California's realignment. And remember we voted on Prop 47 last year? They're going to talk about what's going on now that that passed and how that's what's happening to implement that Prop 47. Now, one of the things that overlays the criminal justice system in California is that we had a federal court order to reduce prison population, and then another court order from the federal government to provide certain services in our prisons. And that had a dramatic impact on the California budget. I became a legislator in December 2006. I think it cost about $23,000 to put somebody in the state prison. Now it's about $60,000. Just to let you know how the change of cost in just a short period of time. We've had a recidivism rate. Recidivism means like in 2 years, are they back in prison or not back in prison? Well, California's rate was 70% of the people that left prison were back in prison in 2 years. And that happens to be the worst in the nation, okay? We were working on the court order, so we had this federal judge that just looked at certain things that we did and didn't look at how that impacted other services the state provides. The state budget, I always tell them a simple way of understanding the state budget is it does education, health and human services, and criminal justice, mainly the Department of Corrections, the 35 state penal institutions that the state of California runs. And the health and human service part is the Medi-Cal, human services for foster kids and seniors, other programs like that. And of course, education is the K-12 education, community college, the University of California, and the CSU system. I describe it to people as education, which gets well over half the money, incarceration, and medication. So you kind of look at it like, if you want to keep it simple, it's those three things. There are other, and that's the general fund of the state. The other parts are funded through special funds like your road repair and Caltrans kinds of activities. You know that the court order caused us to deal with overcrowding of prison facilities. So one of the results was we have to open or rent from private operators prisons. Just to give you an idea, it costs $1 billion to build a prison, and it costs about $1 billion to operate a prison. So an annual cost of a 5,000 bed prison facility is about $1 billion to build and about $1 billion to operate. We cannot afford this, especially since if you look at the other categories of funds, what happens if you have to spend too much money on prisons and these kinds of activities, it of course means the other areas are going to be dramatically affected. And I think my particular point about what's affected is the higher education system's affected, and that's why you see we have a problem in getting all the students that can get into college getting into college, right? So we're getting people into prison but not into college. And they're directly related to one another in terms of the funds and the budget. So I think that's an issue. Now, what it's too early to really say whether or not these initiatives are going to be successful. We do have some early indicators, and we'll discuss those today. At this time, I'd like to introduce my co-host, who is Assembly Member Evan Lowe. Evan was elected to the State Assembly last year and formerly was the mayor of Campbell. And he cares about the community and cares about this issue greatly. And I enjoy working with Evan on these issues. So I'll turn it over to Evan and have him lead us down through our public town hall safety forum. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Bell, and good afternoon to many of you. It's wonderful to be here, and my name is Evan Lowe, and as Senator Bell mentioned, representing the State Assembly. This area, parts of Almeda Valley and San Jose, Cambrian, West San Jose, Cupertino, Campbell, other areas as well. And I grew up in this area, so this issue is very important to me. I'm a graduate of Los Alamitos, Bret Harte, and Leland. And my mother still lives on Redmond and Meridian, and so I know that on the way over here, she made sure that I said hello to her, and I told her to make sure that she makes her way over here as well. But I mentioned that to you because this issue is very personal to me, which is that of making sure that we have the quality of life that is necessary for the communities that we live in. And so how do we ensure that we have an engaged citizenry, which is why you're all here today, but that additionally, we are also held accountable, which is to say that what is the state doing, what is the county doing, and what is the local city doing to ensure that we have the type of public services that we need, and that if we need to do additional work, that we address some of these issues. So let me start off by mentioning, and because I can see the audience here as well, that former Councilwoman Nancy Pyle is also here in the audience. Thank you very much for being here, Nancy. And I also saw from the City of Sunnyvale, Vice Mayor Jim Davis. Thank you very much also, Jim, for being here as well. Obviously, this is a collective effort. Crime does not see boundaries as it relates to city limits. And so, as it relates to the work that I'm doing now, I have asked to serve on the Assembly Public Safety Committee. And in that regard, particularly two bills that I have voted on and will vote on. One is Assembly Bill 56, which is related to drones. Obviously, there's a number of issues related to these emerging technologies, but we need to also ensure that we have necessary privacy in place to have certain guidelines to ensure the public safety as well as maintaining privacy. The other bill is related to Assembly Bill 390, which focuses on DNA. As many of you know, Proposition 47 won with around 60% approval, which reclassified crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. As a result, however, some of the unintended consequences oftentimes results in us not being able to have these individuals in our DNA database. This bill would address much of that issue. And so it's always a work in progress, but let me continue to say that we are working together collaboratively in the state legislature to be able to address many of these needs. And we have a number of staff members that you have ideas that you would like to see in the state or some challenges, public safety related or not. Please engage us in conversations because this is what we are here for. We work for you. So please be sure to engage us in these additional conversations. But having said that, let me finally mention the tremendous work of Senator Bell, and particularly Senate Bill 11 and 29 related to public safety. He has been a champion, the biggest champion of mental health. And as we know, these issues related to public safety, this issue of mental health is an important key aspect. Rather than just punishment and incarceration, we need to address these issues early on and having real, meaningful dialogue about what that means. And equally important, how do we adequately fund these areas, not only at the state level, but the county level, to ensure that we have preventative measures in place and we can engage in dialogue that is meaningful for the future. So having said that, now please allow me to introduce my colleague, Assemblymember Mark Stone, who also represents portions of Almaden Valley. He is the chairman of the very influential Judiciary Committee, which oversees courts, which oversees much of the legal proceedings, immigration, and law. He comes to us as a public servant representing many parts of Silicon Valley. And please allow me to introduce my dear colleague, Assemblymember Mark Stone.
Thank you, Evan. And thank you all for being out here on a beautiful Saturday in the Santa Clara Valley. My name is Mark Stone. We are actually in the 29th Assembly District, which runs on this side of Almaden Expressway, north to a little bit north of 85, east to 101, and south towards the Morgan Hill area, then over the hill includes most of Santa Cruz County and northern Monterey County. I served on the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors for 9 years, and we implemented what was called AB 109, but the realignment procedures, and struggled with it as I know you have here in Santa Clara County. And the way that law really works is it is passing a lot of the responsibility down to the local level, but without a lot of specific instruction. So it does take each county and each jurisdiction to implement their own way. And that's where the partnership really lies, in how we're going to successfully implement these changes. And the governor's been very clear about not putting constraints on local jurisdictions as we work with it. And one of the reasons I went to the legislature was to work on some of the prison reform areas and make sure that we're keeping our community safe. At the same time, being responsible to that prison population that's there. California doesn't have any higher of a crime rate than other states, but we have a much, much higher incarceration rate. And that's something that we need to look at, especially given the great expense that is for all of us out of the general funds, but also the expense in the communities. And then looking at how AB 109, this prison realignment, was implemented, there are a few counties statewide that are the model for that implementation. Santa Clara County is one of them. I'm very proud to represent Santa Clara County, Monterey County, and Santa Cruz County, and about to know the sheriffs, the jail situations there, probation departments, and each county implements a little bit differently. And I've been working closely with Sheriff Smith in trying to give local tools to reduce recidivism, to give incentives to the people who are locked up so that we don't see them coming back. That's the single biggest problem in California, is that recidivism rate. And you'll hear that when we have the right kinds of programs, both in jails and transitioning out of jails, that we can significantly reduce the impact of those people who would otherwise be coming back, addressing the mental health issues, addressing their substance abuse issues, addressing their ability to work within the community. And when we don't see them back in the prison system, that's the success we're looking for. And if we can drop from the 70% to imagine 50%, 40% overall, that's hundreds of millions of dollars every year that can go to much better programs like education that we so sorely need here in the state of California. So we have a better use for that money. We shouldn't be building more prisons. We should be making sure that the prison system is responsible and operating in a way that reduces that level of crime in our communities. That's the nut of it. That's why the realignment program was passed out of the legislature, but it's up to counties and cities to implement it in their own way. And I know you've been having some struggles here in the Almaden Valley. Property crimes are up. And as we look around other communities, different communities are having different impacts. Not so as much as it is here, but that's where we rely on local partners to do their part of ensuring that overall that we do have safe communities. You've been spending some money. I know a lot of you have been hiring private security because that police presence is a very important part of keeping our communities together and keeping our communities safe. So from the state level, we're trying to put together tools for both at the state prison and local level to use to reduce recidivism, put programming in place, keep those people from coming back in contact with law enforcement, keep them from doing the things that they went to jail or to prison for in the first place, and make sure that they are productive parts of our community. That's our commitment. I've been working on a number of pieces of legislation around that because I care so much about the issue that we are being responsible. We're here today to answer your questions, give you a sense of the programs that are here, but you can take great pride in knowing that Santa Clara County is really one of the leaders in the state of California, raising the bar, reducing recidivism, and taking care of that programming that's needed as people transition out of the jail system. That cooperation with the mental health system, with probation, with the community programs that are here, as well as the local police agencies, is part and parcel to making sure that we're successful, that we're safe in our communities, and can operate the way we want to and we deserve to be in our communities. So I'm happy to be here today. Glad to see that we did get some folks to come out and be a part of this very, very important conversation.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Mark Stone. I also want to recognize the presence of the former police chief of San Jose, Rob Davis. Thank you very much for being here as well. As you can see, we can come up with many of the answers here. We have the state, local, both here. We are in District 10 of City of San Jose. Thank you very much for the partnership and allowing us to be here and try to come up with some solutions. Please join me in welcoming your Councilmember Johnny Camus.
First, I also want to recognize Captain Ed Schroeder, our newest captain for the Southern Division. So, a vigilant community is a safe community. I wanted to put together another information forum after the last time we had 1,000 people show up. This was slightly under 1,000 today, but thank you for coming. Safety is my top priority in my district. It's a way of life that we're accustomed to having a very safe neighborhood. And after experiencing a very sharp rise after November of last year, a lot of the questions that the community was asking us were frankly above my pay grade. So a lot of the decisions that are made are not made locally. A lot of the enforcement decisions, a lot of the decisions that influence recidivism, a lot of influence incarceration. So what better way to answer your questions than to bring the answers from the source, and I'm delighted that we had such a good turnout from our locally elected state assembly members and state senator, and I want to thank every one of them. Senator Jim Bell, you guys already heard their names, but I want to thank them personally for taking the time out to come here from the state and working on informing our community about just the how things work, and because a lot of the questions, like I said, were coming to us, and about Prop 47, Prop 32, prison realignment, and we kept saying, you know what, the city doesn't determine these laws. These laws are influenced by the state and by voters, and those are things that we have to take up with the state. So thank you all for being here. I'm here to also give you a little bit of good news. According to Captain Schroeder, the last 2 months has seen a sharp reduction in crime. We still have a problem, but it's dramatically lower, and we did catch 6 burglars in Almaden in the last 2 months. Thanks to the vigilance of our neighborhoods. They've actually done a lot of community neighborhood watch meetings. I've attended at least 3 in the last month, and of course, the great work of our police officers and our TABS, which is the Truancy Abatement, I forget the acronym, what it stands for, but they actually address issues with our young people who are committing these crimes, and quite frankly, from what I'm told from our police, more than 50% of all of these burglaries happen by high school age kids, and the law doesn't really touch them very much, even when they do commit crimes. So, with that being said, I don't want to talk. I want you guys to have the opportunity to ask our elected officials things that are out of my purview, and I want to hand the mic back over to Assemblymember Lowe.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Just a housekeeping item. As many of you may have questions, we have a number of staff members who have cards that will be walking through the crowd. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down, and we'll be sure to get them answered for you. A number of you have them as well, and so we will engage in. We also received a number of questions prior in advance. So just to give you a flavor of the type of questions that were being asked. For example, related to Prop 47, as you know, San Jose Police Department staffing levels is one of the lowest per capita in the state. Will any of the savings associated with these efforts make it to our police department so that we can hire more police officers? Or, what is the Santa Clara County Mental Health Department doing to avoid situations like the killing of Officer Johnson? So again, just to flavor some questions, but please feel free. We have staff members here to answer any of your questions, and please feel free to write them down, and we will get them addressed. Moving straight forward then, please allow me to introduce Drew Soderberg from the State Legislative Analyst's Office, Managing Principal, who oversees the Criminal Justice Section for the state of California in the legislature. He earned his Master of Arts in Economics from UC Davis and his BA in Economics from the University of Colorado. So please join me in welcoming Drew.
Hello? Okay, great. So today I've prepared a presentation to give you some of the facts about the effects of Prop 47 and the 2011 realignment. I work with the Legislative Analyst's Office. We are nonpartisan fiscal and policy advisors to the state's legislature. And within that office, I work in the criminal justice section. And so our office has spent quite a bit of time taking a look at these two significant changes to our criminal justice system. And I'll talk a little bit more about them today. So if you could advance to the next slide, that would be great. You can go ahead and go one more. To begin with Prop 47, today I'll be talking about how Prop 47 works, how it affects state and local government, what has happened so far, and also how the state is planning on using the savings. Perhaps addressing a little bit the question that was posed to Assemblymember Lowe. If you could advance the next slide, that'd be great. So the major change associated with Prop 47 is a reduction in penalties. Specifically, what Prop 47 does is reduce the penalties for certain property and drug crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. It specifically affects most crimes related to possessing illegal drugs for personal use, as well as a series of property crimes when those crimes involve $950 or less. However, the measure only limits these reduced penalties to individuals who haven't previously been convicted of certain severe crimes, such as murder, certain sex crimes, and gun-related crimes. If you could advance the next slide, that'd be great. Thanks. In addition, the measure is retroactive. That means that it allows individuals who are currently serving sentences for the affected crimes to petition the courts to have themselves resentenced to a misdemeanor sentence. In addition, it allows offenders who have already completed their sentence to ask the courts to change their criminal history so it only reflects a misdemeanor rather than a felony conviction. However, once again, these options are only available to people who haven't been convicted of the severe crimes listed in the measure. And the measure also says that courts are not required to resentence individuals if they find it likely that the person is going to commit a severe crime once they're released from prison. In addition, Prop 47 specifies that all the state savings created by the measure have to be annually transferred to a newly created Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Fund, and that 65% of the monies deposited in that fund have to be spent on mental health and drug abuse treatment, 25% for school truancy and dropout prevention, and 10% for victim services. If you could go ahead and advance the next slide, that'd be great. So the major effects of Prop 47 for the state are really going to be concentrated in the state's prison and parole system. Because individuals convicted of misdemeanors do not serve their sentences in state prison, Prop 47 will make fewer offenders eligible for state prison, which could result in an ongoing reduction to the state's prison population of several thousand offenders within a few years. In addition, the resentencing portions of the measure could also result in the release of several thousand offenders in the next few years. In addition, because the measure requires that people released from prison or jail be supervised by state parole agents, it will also create an increase in the state's parole population. On net, we estimate that the changes associated with Prop 47 will result in $100 to $200 million in savings annually by 2016-17. But bear in mind that those savings are transferred to the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools funds for the programs I just described earlier. While Prop 47 affects the state in significant ways, it really affects county criminal justice systems, perhaps even more significantly. Prop 47 will reduce county jail populations because most offenders convicted of crimes affected by the measure who are currently serving jail terms will spend shorter amounts of time in jail. Now, this reduction will be slightly offset by an increase in the jail population, as offenders who would have otherwise served their sentences in state prison will now serve their terms in county jail. On balance, we estimate that this could free up tens of thousands of jail beds. However, it's important to keep in mind that that might not reduce the county jail populations by a commensurate amount. About 33 counties are currently overcrowded and are therefore releasing inmates early. So what you could see happening in those counties is they'll use those freed up jail beds to reduce the number of offenders they're releasing early. In other words, they'll require more of the people they house following Prop 47 to serve a larger proportion of their sentence. In addition, county community supervision populations, you can think of those are the individuals supervised by probation officers, will decline by tens of thousands of offenders because individuals affected by Prop 47 will be subject to less supervision. However, county probation departments may choose to reinvest the savings that they got from the lower caseloads by more intensively supervising the offenders that remain on their caseload. Overall, we estimate that the changes associated with Prop 47 could create several $100 million in reduced workload for county correctional systems on a statewide basis within a few years. I'll now provide a little bit of information about how the implementation has gone to date, which should be on the next slide. So far, courts have received 100,000 petitions for resentencing or for changes of criminal history. The state prison population, like I said, is already being affected. The administration estimates that the population will average about 1,900 offenders lower over the course of 2015-16. But since April, or as of April 1, I should say, over 3,300 offenders have been released from state prisons. So the population effect could be more significant than what was originally estimated by the administration. There's not a great deal of data available on how Prop 47 has affected county jails and community supervision populations quite yet, but early indications are that it's having a significant effect. In Los Angeles County, for example, one of the overcrowded jail systems, they saw their population decline and in response are requiring the remaining individuals to serve a larger proportion of their sentence. Now I'll talk a little bit about some of the proposals related to the savings created by Prop 47. So as I mentioned, there could be $100 to $200 million annually available by 2016-17. The exact amount, though, is really going to depend on choices made by the state in the implementation of Prop 47 and exactly how the state goes about calculating the savings associated with that. Now, while the measure does provide broad guidance for how the state is supposed to spend the funds, the state does have some flexibility in making some providing greater guidance to the agencies that will get the money. And as a result, there are many different bills pending in the legislature related to the use of the State Neighborhood and Schools Fund. So, for example, Senator Bell has co-authored, or has authored SB 205, which would require a public university to evaluate the effects of Prop 47, and SB 515, which requires that 2/3 of the funding set aside for mental health and drug treatment be provided to public agencies that employ licensed professionals to deliver treatment that has been proven by research to be effective. So that gives you a little flavor of how the state is considering using some of the savings created by the measure. So in this next portion, I'll talk a little bit about the realignment kind of context of how it works, why it was passed, and how it's affecting the state. To begin with, the 2011 realignment was a large-scale shift of responsibility from various programs from the state to county governments. And in addition to shifting the responsibility for these programs, however, the state also shifted about $6 billion of state tax revenue to counties to finance the new responsibilities. While the realignment wasn't limited only to sentencing changes, the sentencing changes associated with realignment were really the most significant policy changes included in the bill. So essentially what it did is it required counties rather than the state to be responsible for newly convicted felons if those felons have no current or prior convictions for serious, violent, or sex offenses. It also required counties rather than the state to supervise individuals, parolees who are released from prison if those individuals don't have a current serious or violent offense, And finally, it requires county jails to hold individuals who violate the terms of their parole rather than having those individuals serve their terms in state prison. I now want to talk a little bit about why the 2011 realignment was passed. Senator Bell touched on this a little bit. It's really critical to understand why the shift of responsibilities was undertaken. At the time realignment was implemented, CDCR had significant prison overcrowding. CDCR is the state's prison administrator. The state had around 144,000 offenders in its prison, which represents about 180% of the state's prison design capacity. And a federal 3-judge panel had found that this overcrowding was the key reason that the state was unable to deliver a constitutional level of health care. The Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, agreed with that finding, and in May 2011 gave the state until June 2013 to reduce its prison population to 137.5% of design capacity. Now, one option the state could have had would have been to build more prisons or contract for more prison space, such as in out-of-state private prisons. But at the time, the state was facing a significant fiscal crisis, and so that wasn't realistic. And as a result, it was decided that these responsibilities would be shifted to the counties to help reduce the population. However, it's also important to note that it was thought that counties might be better positioned to deal with these offenders. As Senator Bell mentioned, California had one of the highest recidivism rates in the nation, and it was thought that counties might be better positioned to reintegrate these offenders back into their communities. This next chart shows a little bit about what happened to the correctional populations at the state and local level. As you can see, the county community supervision population increased to the right of the line. The line indicates when the 2011 realignment was passed. The state prison population decreased, and the parole population, the state parole population decreased significantly, and the jail population increased a bit. However, it is important to note that while county populations did go up, as of 2013, they had only just met the previous peaks that were reached in 2007. So if you take a look at the next slide, you'll see this is sort of a different cut of the data. You can see that in 2010, between 2010 and 2013, the portion of the adult offender population that was a county responsibility increased significantly. However, one thing I'd draw your attention to is that the size of the total offender population dropped. So in 2010, The state and county correctional systems were responsible for about 653,000 offenders, but by 2013, that had dropped to just over 600,000.
Drew, might I ask you to kind of wrap up in 1 minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So I'll conclude by talking a little bit about the initial data we have on the effects of the 2011 realignment. Essentially what researchers have found is that the 2011 realignment likely has not contributed to any increase in the violent crime rate, but that it's possible that the 2011 realignment did contribute to an increase in property crime rates, in particular to motor vehicle theft rates. However, it is important to note that these are initial effects of the 2011 realignment, and it may take years before the full effects are felt, and will likely vary by county depending on the way various counties react to the changes. So that concludes my presentation, so I'll be happy to turn it over to our next speaker.
Great, thank you very much. Certainly more information to be known. Again, if you have questions, we have note cards that are being passed around as well. So let's hear from the local perspective from the county. With us today, we have Javier Aguirre, Director of Reentry Services at the County of Santa Clara, where he's responsible for the operations and day-to-day functions of the county's Reentry Resource Center. He helps oversee countywide coordination, evaluation, and oversight of the Public Safety Realignment Program and Adult Reentry Strategic Plan.
Well, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Yes. I don't know if people are trying to see or trying to know what the score for the Warriors game. So I don't know if you guys are, but so far so good. So thank you for inviting me here to speak with you. What I want to do today is just talk to you about our vision and mission for our County AB 109 realignment and adult reentry strategic plan, what our efforts we've been doing here in Santa Clara County with our Reentry Resource Center, with the reentry programs offered by the county, and all the reentry efforts that are being provided by many of our community-based organizations. Then I really want to talk to you quickly about our client evaluation and our data collection, and to then also inform you about some good news in terms of recidivism, and then what we're doing in terms of investing in the funds that we've been receiving from the state to implement AB 109. Next slide. So I won't go into detail about our implementation, but every county has to establish a community corrections partnership that is chaired by our probation chief, and they meet quarterly, and it's stakeholders throughout the county, and each of the county's police association has they select someone to represent all the police chiefs at this body. In addition, we have mental health, behavioral health now, social services agency, the office of the county's the executive, the sheriff's office, the district attorney, the public defender, as well as the office of education for the county sits in the AB 109, the CCP, the Community Corrections Partnership. We also have a county approved body which is called the Reentry Network, and that is with all of the similar partners, but also the community-based organizations, and we meet quarterly, and that is chaired by Supervisor Cindy Chavez. Next slide. So what is our vision and our mission? And really wanted to focus on key points there. So our work is to assist the folks that are coming out of state prison, that are coming out of our local jail, that are either being supervised by probation or have no supervision, and they're seeking services. So we are trying to reintegrate them back into the communities, back to their homes and their neighborhoods that they're coming back to Santa Clara County. We also want to make sure that all of our programs are evidence-based, meaning that we are able to collect data, evaluate, and see what's working and what's not. But what is key is reducing recidivism. So as mentioned earlier, the state recidivism is hovering around 70%. And what we did early on, because there was no county recidivism definition or there was no statewide definition. So back in 2013, the Board of Supervisors for Santa Clara defined recidivism as the occurrence of convictions or to state petitions of new law violations both misdemeanors and felonies within 5 years of exiting custody or entering supervision. So we really want to know what are the impacts of our programs when someone leaves custody or enters supervision after 5 years. So we're now tracking about over 4,000 individuals over 5 years to see what's working and what's not. Next slide. What we're really excited is the establishment of a Reentry Resource Center, a centralized hub where individuals come and report. And so here's all of the different partners that we have at the Reentry Resource Center. We collaborate really closely with our Sheriff's Office, our Probation Office, Custody Health, Behavioral Health, which is mental health, and drug and alcohol services. And now we also partner with CDCR, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We now receive an additional about $1.8 million annually from CDCR to case manage 200 parolees that are residing here in Santa Clara County by providing them with substance abuse, mental health services, housing, employment, and enrolling them in Medi-Cal. So we are very unique in terms of case managing 200 parolees on behalf of state parole. Next slide. So what is this Reentry Resource Center? So it's across the street from the police department on Mission and San Pedro, across from the main jail in the County Civic Center. We have about 75 employees working there and assisting the clients. We have a new computer literacy lab. It's a 40,000 square foot multi-level building. And just to give you a quick snapshot of the data that we collected back in October 2014, in 1 month, 372 new individuals showed up. About 1,400 clients visited the center in 1 month. And there was duplicate. A lot of folks are coming there for classes weekly. 39% of those new clients were released within 30 days. And 6% of those new clients are veterans or were in the military. And the highest needs that they are seeking are general assistance, CalFresh, food stamps, Medi-Cal enrollment, food, and clothing. So I won't go, on the next slide, I won't go down with the list of all the resources, but just want to identify 3 key things. We're very fortunate to have funding for a full-time doctor, a full-time psychiatrist, and a nurse as part of the medical mobile unit that works with the homeless team throughout the county. So they're there to assist folks that are just coming out of state prison. And many of the people coming out of state prison may not have their medication, or they need additional assistance. So they see our doctor there, and then they could right away prescribe them the medication to one of our local pharmacies. We also have a full-time psychiatrist. And someone mentioned about the mental health illness. 25% of folks that are in our main jail and Alwood Correctional Facility, 25% have a mental health illness. And a lot of the times, a lot of them are being served there while they're in custody, but when they exit, they're lost. They have nowhere to go. And by having a full-time psychiatrist at the center can give them that transition, that seamless transition to assist them and to reintegrate in our community. We're very fortunate too to work with the faith-based organizations. We work with Cathedral of Faith, the Diocese of Santa Clara County, the Diocese of San Jose, Bible Way, and Mission Possible, which is another church. So what's very important is that we thought working with the faith-based organizations to assist the individuals. And we have 4 faith-based centers throughout the county that if we cannot assist them, or folks that are coming to our center don't want to deal with anything with government, but they are needing spiritual advice or spiritual assistance, or really having that peer mentorship, we then refer them to those 4 faith-based organizations. So the next slide. So I mentioned to you our unique agreement with CDCR to provide services for 200 parolees. So just as of last month, we received 700 referrals from parole agents to help their clients. But at that moment, we only could serve 197 clients. We provided them 22 of them received emergency housing. So many people that are coming out of state prison have $200, and there you go. Find your way back to Santa Clara County to your home, may not know where to reside. Many show up at our center not knowing where to sleep. And so we have funding for emergency motel voucher just to get them to a motel voucher. Then we could see if we could assist them with long-term housing. Many are in need of education and employment. We had one parolee that after 25 years was released, had no clue how to deal or work with a cell phone, had no understanding of keyboarding and the computer, and we were able to get him to a class. We partnered with Goodwill Industries. They provide some exceptional on-the-site employment and subsidized hourly wage. And now he's able to work full-time at Levi Stadium, working there. And he came back to the center a few months ago and he said, I had my first date and understanding how to unify with his adult children. And that's remarkable because of things that we're doing there at the Reentry Center. We also have domestic violence, of course, for folks that need the domestic violence class. And many times they're required to pay for this class. Well, with our contract with City Star, we provided them free so they make sure that they have a 52-week course. Next slide. We're really excited about making sure our clients, when they're exiting jail, have Medi-Cal. The key to success that we realize when people are leaving custody is to ensure they have insurance, to make sure that they can use Medi-Cal to get the mental health services, getting the primary health care. So with AB 720, a law that was implemented in January of last year, we leveraged general funds to invest in our social services agency and our Department of Correction to enroll folks that are while in custody. So for a pilot project in March of last year for 6 weeks and fully implementing this plan in October of last year, we've been able to enroll 1,100 inmates between 18 and 40. And with the Affordable Care Act that was approved years ago, it allowed single males that were low income enrolled in Medi-Cal. So folks that are coming out of jail have no jobs. Folks that are coming out of state prison have no jobs. So they're already low income. Some of them are homeless, so we're able to enroll them in Medi-Cal. We're now, the supervisors are now asking us, what is our savings? So we have a lot of folks that were going to our ER emergency department, and we're expending a lot of funds. But now that we got them on Medi-Cal, we want to prevent them from going to the ER, to getting that primary health service if they need once they're being released. Next slide. So what we've done with our AB 109 funds, we've also contract with a lot of community-based organizations like Milpitas Unified School District, Center for Training and Careers, Catholic Charities, Envision, Goodwill, Community Solutions, Gardner Family Care, Health Right 360, Bay Area Legal Services, and Pro Bono Project. All those entities provide various services for our clients there at the Reentry Resource Center, and folks are being linked with our faith-based collaboratives. So the next slide just gives you a snapshot of the funding for over 2 years. We set aside our AB 109, $3 million over AB 109 for 2 years to provide all those services. And we're looking at the number of clients we served and what's been the results. So the next slide will give you kind of a snapshot of what we've done with those services. Majority of folks that are accessing those services are Hispanic. 95% accessing those services are unemployed. 30% are homeless. Majority are general probation and AB 109 clients. And what we've done is enrolled 87 clients in education services. We got 143 completed job training. 80 received subsidized employment. And we're really excited that only 11% of the clients that we've been able to track were arrested while receiving the services. So we know what we're doing is working. The majority of those clients, their conviction was based on that they were charged for under influence of a controlled substance. Next slide. So I mentioned to you our great work with our faith-based collaborative. So they're into their third year in working with our center. We have a full-time county employee that links them to those faith-based services. So we're linking them to the faith, spiritual, and social community support. And they offer various services. And there are a lot of times that we cannot serve individuals, so then we refer them. And so they're only their umbrella of how many they can serve is about 300 to 500 individuals countywide. And they're going to be hosting a job fair later this month with Probation, the faith-based collaborative, because there's a lot of people in the faith-based that know employers that will hire people with a record. And having those connections, and a lot of the faith-based community organizations and many of the churches that have peer mentors that work with folks that know that they've gone through incarceration. So next slide. So this is just a quick snapshot of an evaluation that we did with our faith-based collaborative. We hired an outside consultant to kind of see what we've been doing. And again, majority are Latino, Hispanic, and African American. And in terms of the referrals, they've made thousands of referrals to different community services. So the next slide. So just wanted to touch base on our overall evaluation of the AB 109. The board and the CCP, chaired by our chief probation, really wanted us to evaluate from the beginning of the implementation of AB 109. So we hired a resource development associates, an outside consultant, who has been asking us these two key questions. What is the recidivism rate of the AB 109 clients? And do the services the county provides and refers help clients decrease their recidivism? And so RDA is now completing a 3-year evaluation, and we'll be releasing that full report in July. Next slide. So I mentioned to you our definition of recidivism, and now the state in September of last year asked the Board of State and Community Corrections to define a statewide definition. Very similar to ours, but they're stopping at 3 years. We want to see the effects of an individual services after 5 years. So we're looking at, because it's important to see what services are working after even 5 years of being released. So the next slide. So within 3 years of data, about 3,700 individuals. And unfortunately, we don't have a great technology to track, so we're using spreadsheets. So we have this huge spreadsheet of 3,700 individuals trying to figure out which services they received and whether they recidivated. And we just finalized our numbers last night, and we can report that our overall AB 109 recidivism rate is 34.5. So I think we are doing something really great here in Santa Clara County. You heard the recidivism rate of the state hovering around 68, 70. We're at 34.5. 6 months ago, 6 months ago, we did an initial recidivism, and it was about 38. So now we're at 34.5. And you're the first crowd that we're announcing this recidivism, because we still have to go to verify that number and then go to the board. But what it shows is that people that are coming out of jail and state prison that are being supervised by probation is making an impact, because probation staff is at the reentry resource center to then refer people to clients. And then just a quick, so in terms of people exiting, so people are either exiting state prison, being supervised by probation, or exiting our county jail, no supervision, or being supervised by probation. And out of the 1,400 that exited our jail, 699 were arrested and subsequently convicted of new law violation. So that rate is a little bit higher than we want and expect. And so we're now focusing on what reentry programs can we do while they're in custody. So the next slide gives you a big picture of our funding. So you heard earlier from our state legislatures that each county was receiving a pot of AB 109 funding. No strings attached. You're getting this number of individuals coming from state prison. You're going to be housing more folks in your local jails. You decide how you want to spend your money. we at the county decided it was key for us to fund mental health, substance abuse. For 10 years during our economic downturn, we cut, almost disseminated drug and alcohol services and mental health services. Through AB 109 services, we're now funding some of those services. And so in fiscal year 2012, we gave a part of the money, 30% to probation, about 34% to Department of Correction, Sheriff, and 26% to health services and community-based treatment like mental health and substance abuse. Now we're at 33% in last year, fiscal year 15. The next slide is now...
Excuse me, Javier, maybe we can go to...
Sure. The next slide gives you a perspective of what we're going to be recommending to the board. So now we're going from 26 to 36% for mental health, substance abuse, custody services. And so this just shows you what we're doing. We're also leveraging other resources like the Measure A sales tax, residential treatment beds. We have about a list of about 130 people waiting in custody to be referred to a treatment bed so they could work on their substance abuse treatment. And now we're leveraging our sales tax. So the next slide is just quick. Next step, we now opened an office in San Martin to work with the Gilroy and Morgan Hill police departments. We're trying a unique partnership where the police departments can make direct referrals to our center to help with their 8109 clients to access. So I was just jokingly talking to one of the chiefs down there. It's like, instead of, if you're catching someone because they have a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue, instead of driving all the way to San Jose to book them and arrest them, stop by our center to see if they've been in our system so we could then provide them with services. That saves them a trip to San Jose. And then we're really excited to apply to the MacArthur Foundation. We're applying for this grant because we need to change our jail system. 57% of the folks that are in jail are Hispanic, and they only make up 27% of our county population. About 12% in their jail are black. They only make up about 2%. So we're looking at ways to make changes in our reentry program. And our next slide is just contact information, but I'm so glad I was able to share with you our efforts with reentry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier, and I'm sure that if you are interested in some of these slides that you've seen, we're more than happy to provide much of them to you, in addition to the contact information for all of us here in case you have any additional follow-up as well. So again, if you have particular questions, feel free to submit your note cards. I have a number of them here, and allow me to then pose these questions and encapsulate the intent of the questions here, which essentially, first couple of questions, focuses in on some of the preventative measures that we might have as it might relate to investing in, for example, the correlation between that of students who drop out and the lack of preschool education. Are there any extra additional dollars coming from the county, city, and or state related to some of these preventative measures such as education in preschool? And in addition, how about any additional efforts related to mental health? Again, focus on some of the preventative measures and areas related specifically to public safety. And again, are there investments and measures to invest in job skills, to focus on training for many of these areas? So again, any additional insights as it relates to the focus on early education, job skills and training, and or mental health? Any questions for the Ben?
Well, we'll go ahead.
Okay.
We'll go down the road.
Go down the road. Take a crack at a little bit of that. The correlation between early childhood education and the incarceration rate, there's actually one step in between there, and that's third grade reading levels. And we know all the data shows that third grade reading level is a very good indicator of whether a child graduates from high school or ends up in the prison system. And one of the best markers for what predictors for third grade reading levels is early childhood education. In this state, we tend to start our education system at the kindergarten level and have not really had the focus on early childhood education and supports for families. We are working to try and make that change within the education system and within the support services that we can, because that is one thing that we can do to change that trajectory for a lot of the kids who are out there. And there are a number of different things in there. There are bills this year on the apprenticeships and giving skills and training to people who are in jails and in prison so that they have job skills when they come out. So they have job skills when we answer the housing question, when we give them some of the simple tools like an ID card, a California ID card. Those are directly related to the reduction of whether or not we see them come back, the reduction of recidivism tools. So we've been looking at those effects both at the state level, both coming out of state prison, and trying to give tools at the local level. Again, we're not going to mandate from the state to the locals. The money is coming to the locals, to the states, or to the counties and to the cities. It's up to them to figure out how best to spend them. And I think you heard that Santa Clara County is doing an excellent job, as I said earlier, a real model for the state. But what we're trying to do at the state level is find funding that we can and look at the systems that are directly affecting the behaviors and the ways we need to reach people. One of the leaders in the legislature on mental health is sitting to my left here. And I will just say, as Jim knows, that the mental health system in California is a bit fractured right now. We've been working hard to put it together and to have that continuity of supports for families and kids to get to the underlying issues before they become criminal justice issues.
I'll use this one. Okay, just some quick things. On the preschool level, we're going to hear from these two guys, but I want to say that we're focused also on early start for special needs kids. So we got the money in the budget for the early start for the special needs kids. I think a lot of those kids that have learning disabilities need to be focused on with the early start program. And the other one is that we had a bill that went through the state Senate Education Committee unanimously. And, we got a lot of the Republicans even asked to be the co-authors of this bill. And, we introduced to do a pilot program. You know how you have to go through eligibility processes and all this kind of stuff? Well, we said, well, since all the kids in the Elm Rock School District are already eligible for the reduced school lunch program, they have to fill out a program form to become eligible. Why do they have to fill out the same kind of form for getting the child care programs and do another set of forms for that? Why don't we just say if they're eligible for the school lunch program, we could save the money for the processing of the forms for the child care and then use that money to put kindergarten and first graders in that whole school district into child care for the entire day combined with their school. So they're going to be, if that bill passes, we'll have full day kindergarten and first grade plus child care for the full day for the Elm Rock School District kids. That's pretty good, right? We'll have those days. Again, you know what the cost of that is? Nothing. Nothing. Doesn't cost anything. It's because we're taking all the money from the bureaucracy procedures and we're saving the money and putting it back into the kids in the school. So we got the money for that, and that went through the first hoop. Mental health, we expanded Medi-Cal a couple years ago, and Medi-Cal now covers single childless adults, so the older adults that are kind of in that crime, the young adult males that are in that kind of period, 18 to 30, they are now covered with Medi-Cal. What that means is they can get mental health and substance abuse treatment with their Medi-Cal card. So what we're doing in California is we're giving all the prisoners in the state prison Medi-Cal cards when they leave the prison. We're processing those cards, so when they go out into the community after they leave, they don't just get $200, they get the Medi-Cal cards, and we're trying to find housing so they can stabilize and not be homeless while they're going through this transition. I think all this, I'll just say this on public, because we're talking about public safety, having been a council member in San Jose 14 years, all this stuff that I'm talking about doesn't mean that we don't need to have an adequate police force, and I think that we need to keep the pressure on to expand our police force in general. Because, the mental health community, the health community, and the law enforcement community, and the corrections committee all have to work together as a team, you know what I mean? And that's what they used to do. It's been kind of fractured. We have to kind of pull it back together. And you know, the start is, you know, we have to look at this as one team of people making us safe in our community. You know, it's all together. It's not just one versus the other. Okay. Thank you.
We are in budget season, and this year our city's doing a little bit better than we did in prior years. We were looking at some minor surpluses. The mayor's budget message was released a few weeks ago. We approved it. In that mayor's budget message, he included $1 million for school jobs work program for at-risk youth. I actually sit on a committee that is in charge of that effort, and actually the county is matching it. The county is putting another $1 million into summer jobs for youth. We hope it translates into an interest in jobs rather than getting into trouble. The mayor has put in a budget $1 million per year for the next 2 years for after-school programs for at-risk youth. And we also put in an extra $1.5 million this coming fiscal year in the gang prevention task force, which was already budgeted at $3 million. So we're looking at $4.5 million this year for gang prevention task force. We are also going to be funding, again, if the budget passes in June, libraries will be open 6 days a week. All libraries will be open on Saturdays. And so those are some of the efforts. I know that they're not directly related to, for example, police funding. I could talk about that for another half hour. But this is our way to help prevent crimes from happening by, you know, a little ounce of prevention. This is currently still being worked out, and we're still in an area where any of you can make comments coming on any given Tuesday. In fact, we're having a meeting right here on May 5th, which will address the budget. We invite all of you to come and attend that meeting as well and ask these questions about where we're putting our money.
In addition, I would also just like to make mention about the reoccurring theme, which is the challenge of governance. The perpetual challenge of adequate funding, particularly during the recession. Public jurisdictions need to make cuts. The state of California, the county, local jurisdictions. And so we need to be frank and honest about having honest conversations directly about the prioritizations of the services that we receive. And do we have the adequate resources to be able to pay for that? And I think it's, again, important that you help indicate to us what the priorities you have for the community. You know, similarly, we live in a democracy, and we just heard about questions focused on preventative measures related to perhaps education funding, funding towards job skills, and also mental health. On the flip side, there might be another question which goes into this, which is that there are a number of funding measures going into other initiatives, but why not just directly reducing crime by hiring more police officers?
Here, here.
So again, I think it's important, just the observation again. You have one set of philosophy and thought about funding towards preventive measures in other areas, and another thought going directly into direct police services. So again, the challenges that exist in the democracy, which is the best public policy. Might any colleagues up here have some thought directly on that issue?
You know, when working with our sheriff department, the sheriff has an ability to do what they call an alternative custodial supervision. And so folks that have minor offenses can spend half of their time out in the community, going to work, going to school, but they're being supervised by a deputy sheriff. And we increased the deputy sheriff number with 8109 funds to provide that service. A lot of those individuals have substance abuse issues, and many of them we've then been using our residential treatment beds. And what's very unique, and our treatment providers will say that having them being supervised by a deputy sheriff, they just show up at any given time to check on their individuals, to see if they're in that treatment center, getting that treatment. And we're now seeing some really good results in the success of those individuals. The research that I've been seeing, a lot of other states are working is educating our police departments to look at reentry at a different viewpoint. I reside in Gilroy. I was on the school board for 5 years, so I established a good rapport with our police department. And now I'm in this position that I'm now working closely with the police departments in Gilroy, Morgan Hill to create our office. We're only going to be there Tuesdays in South County, but our Supervisor Wasserman, who represents this area, wants us to increase those days. But also work with our police department to identify those that they're arrested because they have a mental health issue. How do we then link them to mental health services so they're not re-offending? Because they're going to go to jail 2 days, 3 days later, they're going to go back to the community. We got to eliminate that repeat offender, or help assist that repeat offender. Another thing that we're working closely in Gilroy is doing meditation program for our students. We have a meditation program in our facility with Carry the Vision, and in terms of helping individuals to rethink and to be calm when they're responding. And we've seen some good results with our meditation program, and now we're going to be doing that meditation program with some of our high-risk students. Our focus is to work with mostly the dads that are coming out of jail that have kids, because we want to end that cycle. So if we provide parenting classes to the inmates, because they're going to reunify with their kids, they need to get those cognitive behavioral sessions so that they can deal with their students. I'm working closely with Juvenile Hall and the judges to look at ending that cycle of the parents having kids that are at risk. How do we then assist them so they don't become and go back into our systems?
Can I ask that you stay on topic and answer the question? Because that was a really excellent question, partially mine, I think, and why we don't invest in law enforcement and also beyond the programs. With all due respect, great presentation. But can we stay on topic with the answer to the question?
Sure.
Please?
Let me allow Senator Bell to respond, and then I know that we can see you and a number of individuals can also speak to you directly. If you can encapsulate some of that into additional remarks.
Okay, kind of a lot of people may not, some of you know my background, but some of you don't. I'm 14 years I served on the San Jose City Council in the Cambrian area. I was the first district representative. Grew up right off of Brandon Lane and Sherry Avenue. Went to John Muir Junior High School and grew up there with my 9 brothers and sisters, okay? And so I got on the council in 1981 and served 14 years, and then I served 12 years on the County Board of Supervisors. So I know a lot about the county, and then now I've got 8 years here at the legislature, 2 years as a senator. And I'm going to go back to the police department issue, okay? Kind of historical, San Jose Police Department has always been an elite department. San Jose has always had a higher degree of training, education in their department. The department historically has been lower per capita than other major cities in the country or in California. And they have taken advantage of the fact that we had higher training. We've always had good detective bureaus, so the detective bureau was able to close cases, so we were able to solve crime. So it's not just about patrolling, it's kind of a combined patrolling and solving crime. The department has always had good response time, but what's happened in the last, those are very, all those things I mentioned were part of the model that we had. We always had a community policing kind of approach. with working with the community, working with the programs that we all talked about. So we had a model that we had in San Jose, okay? This is the bigger picture. And perhaps Chief Davis, am I right? I pretty much got it? I pretty much, okay. San Jose had we had a higher trained staff. We closed cases better than other departments. We had less officers, but the officers we had were like super knights rather than squires, okay? You know what I'm saying? I could say it that way, but the guys were really good. They know what they were doing. They were better trained, okay? So they were able to solve the crimes, and they kind of knew the community. Well, now we've gone through this sort of little bit of a turmoil, and we have to bounce back now, okay? So we need to hire not only new officers, we need to hire people that are trained and people that can close the cases. And I see this is going to be very difficult. How do we do that in San Jose? Just, tell the council member here a little advice from one of the oldies but goodies. Here I am. I'll tell you what the state government has done in a lot of cases, like in education and the county governments, is what we've done is there's all these little special funds you'll find in your city budget or county budget or state budget. Well, every time there's a special fund, the elected officials have less control over it. Just think of it that way. You see all these special, Councilwoman Pyle would know this, right? Every time you have a special fund, somebody's controlling it a little bit more than the elected official. It gets further away from the people and the people's priorities, okay? So my theory is to try to, and we did this in the county, and we did it in the education system at the state, is we consolidate all these funds, we put them into the general fund, allow the decision process to set priorities in a realistic manner and not have the excuse, well, we can't spend that money on police because that's in a special fund. Sometimes it'll take going to the ballot, sometimes it'll require a statute from the legislature if need be. I'll be happy to do that. But I think what I'm saying is local decision making has to have more flexibility so the elected officials, the people that you elect, can make a decision on the priorities. And if we do that, I think we're going to have, questions answered like, what is the adequate police department we have? What kind of police department do we want to have? And I'm willing to work with that as a state senator. I'm working to work with Johnny. I'm working to work with Mayor Sam Liccardo. This is not a simple subject. I think we need to have respect for one another as we go through this difficult dilemma, and not be a finger-pointing kind of operation. We have to kind of be respectful, and I think we're starting that, and I know the council wants to do it that way too.
Savings from 47 directly to law enforcement, community service officers.
47, we could use some of that 47.
Yes.
It could happen. Some of that truancy abatement program go to the police department. We used to have a fairly good, inadequately funded, but a pretty good program with the schools, with our police department here in San Jose. And we can continue, and that it's effective, it works good. The juvenile offenders, working with the families, the police department, it's an effective thing to do, to use Prop 47 savings. But you saw on the chart that under the statute, the initiative statute, that was not put on the ballot by the legislature, was put on the ballot by the initiative. Somebody wrote it, some millionaire guy wrote it, like a lot of things, right? He put on there that we can't use the money until 2016-2017 fiscal year. So that's the next fiscal year, not this one. So now we have to get ready to see where we're going to spend the money this year and make sure it's spent wisely. I think those truancy abatement programs, in particular with the police department, are real winners. They usually produce, what did you just hear? I mean, who's committing the crimes? The high school kids? So what do you think a truancy abatement, good, solid truancy abatement program would do to that? It'd knock down some of that, right? So that's where we can target those kinds of things and say, hey, we got a problem with these kids going out and robbing houses and cars and stuff. It's causing the crime rate to go up. So we can target that truancy abatement program, those kind of activities. And I'd be willing to work with the city government, and they always call on me for what they need, and I always respond, so thank you.
And all I'll add, I think that the Senator touched on a lot of areas. As a former school board member, one of the things that we found most valuable was having a resource officer, police resource officer on campus. Now, a lot of those days are gone. In fact, we were able to fund part of it and have a police officer, and it's that touch that the police officer has, or any service providers, because in that role, the police officer is a service provider, asking questions, finding out how somebody is, and if there's an indication, helping to head off a problem early. And we've lost a little bit of that ability to do that touch in a lot of our communities. From the statewide perspective, the truancy programs, a lot of the things we're trying to do is put back some of these systems so that they can operate more effectively together. Kamala Harris, who's the Attorney General, has a very significant truancy program that she's putting together to address some of these issues. Finding out why kids are not in school, finding out what they're doing, looking that back to the community. There's very little substitute for feet on the ground, and that personal contact with our youth or with potential offenders or with anyone who's in a crisis or who's struggling in our community. And that means getting back together the mental health system, means making sure that we're making the kinds of investments in our communities that really pay off. So one of the reasons that under Prop 30 and under the realignment, the state is saying, here are the resources. You, counties and cities, need to figure out how best to spend the money, because the political will, the structure, the needs, the demographics in each of our counties is a little bit different. And I'm hoping we're past the days when the state is saying, here's money and here's how you spend it. That never works very well, whether it's education, health and human services, or in this case, public safety. But letting you, the citizen, be a part of having that conversation with your local electeds on how to design what you have and make that most effective, so that whether it's predictive policing, whether it's increased mental health services, using the very, very flexible money that's coming down to you under Prop 30 to the best way possible to meet the needs of the community.
Well, you heard it here. We're going to get some Prop 47 money. And I will make sure we follow up on that next year when that money is released. I especially like the idea of spending it on the truancy abatement process in the city, especially since talking to a lieutenant this morning at a grand opening of a local park here. And, we were discussing how the kids that get incarcerated, again, more than 50% of the offenders are kids. They don't even get turned into jail. I mean, I forget, he said it was a washing machine. I forget the words that he used. They just turn around and recommit. And he said they're doing it as if they were trying to get high on drugs. They're doing it for the excitement, not necessarily to make money. And so I think that truancy abatement programs, getting these kids jobs, is a big step in the right direction. And we need to do whatever we can to encourage kids to look out for their future, and not necessarily what's going to excite them in a moment's time. I do want to say, as far as funding is concerned, our city is funded for 1,109 currently police officers, although we only have 960 employed. We have 3 academies that we have funded to occur this year. We just graduated a class where 3,600 applicants applied and 19 graduated. We are, in this coming year's budget, we actually have 28 community service officers, and we're adding 26 new community service officer positions. And these are officers that are being used to handle paperwork, taking crime statistics and fingerprints and all the other, burglary, traffic enforcement, traffic accident reports, what have you. We also have a brand new camera registry, and we're working to fund something called the Emergency Services Interoperability System, where all our police officers, the sheriff, the fire department, and the police, no matter what jurisdiction that they're in, can all work together. It's a very expensive system. It's about $30 million. we've been trickling in a little bit of every year out of our meager monies that we have in our city, hopefully within a couple of years, or unless our generous assembly members and senators can help fund us the rest of the way. We hope to use that to be able to respond to crime and fires faster. So it's the closest police officer or firefighter or ambulance, and rather than what jurisdiction that they lie. You've heard a lot about if you call 911, sometimes you get California Highway Patrol. So this system hopefully will fix all those pockets of lack of service. So the city's working on many creative ways. Everything requires money, unfortunately. And again, I'm delighted to be telling you that we are actually going to be putting a majority of the money for the interoperability system in and we're trying to get another partner with VTA to help us fund some of that as well. And once that's done, I think we'll push forward. I will be asking for certain things that are to come from the budget, technology things that can help our police officers catch burglars and criminals faster. So stay tuned for that. I don't want to release any information today, but I will be asking for some more technology fixes. And again, I want to thank the senators for coming up with that idea about how I think the TABS has been a very, very important program, and thank you for bringing that up.
Let me also just make mention, in addition to my colleagues here, which is to say that it would be disingenuous for us at the state level to tell you money is coming down and therefore solving all of your problems. Having said that, in my capacity, when I served as mayor for the city of Campbell, the challenge that exists, frankly, is that within Santa Clara County, you also have 15 cities. And oftentimes they're very competitive in terms of making the environment a competitive workplace for its public employees. And so when you see the type of devastation, arguably, during the recession in some jurisdictions, other cities are competing. And so when you see massive exodus going to other jurisdictions, other employees will say, well, let's look at the city of Campbell. Is it a good working environment? It's a good place to work. Like, why be thanked for the work that I provide? Palo Alto, Senegal, Cupertino, whatever it might be. So at the same time, I think it's important that we have honest conversations, additionally, about making sure that we can value our public employees and providing the level of environment so that we can retain and keep them in here as well. The funding mechanism is one thing, but we also need to make sure that we are competitive in the nature to be able to retain people, because we also know that it's difficult to live in this environment, given transportation costs, housing costs, whatever it might be. So we need to ensure that we can retain our public employees as well. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and there are a number of questions that need to be asked, but let me mention this, which is I will try to calculate these 3 questions and try to get a speed answer and responses from individuals. I will also mention to you, if your answer did not get answered and you've left your contact information, we'll be sure to work with our council member's office and our legislative offices to get you an answer and to call you as well. So, very quickly, what have other states done in order to cut the cost of prisons? Do prisons run by private companies cost less to operate? Next question. I don't see many police officers around in the city of San Jose. What has been done to increase the police force in San Jose? Also, do we have a specific department for theft in the city? Lastly, Santa Clara County is in a unique position to require unique strategies to address these needs. Who are making these decisions related to our law enforcement policies at the local level? Are they local or federal? And does San Jose's police department have a plan for this? San Jose's police department has a past reputation for excellence. What are we doing to keep law enforcement plans local?
I think I can provide a little bit of information on what other states are doing to reduce the size of their prison populations, and also the question about the private prison costs. So states across the nation are looking for ways to reduce the amount they're spending on prisons, and one of the states that's really been notable in this is Texas. So a few years ago, Texas was looking at needing to build several new prisons that would cost about, I think, $250 million. And instead of doing that, they took that money and they invested it in community corrections programs. And that ultimately proved to bear fruit because they avoided the need to build those new prisons. So it's really, a lot of jurisdictions are looking at investing in evidence-based programs, which are programs that have been shown by research to reduce the rate at which folks offend. In terms of the question on private prison costs, it sort of depends on what you're looking at. A contract for a private prison bed runs about $28,000 per year, which is quite a bit less expensive than building a new prison, but it's quite a bit more expensive than putting an offender in an already existing prison. So really, it depends on the situation you're in. If your alternative is building new prisons, private prisons can be less expensive. But if you have space available in existing prisons, that's quite a bit less expensive. That runs about $10,000 per offender.
I asked that question at the hearing last week.
And to follow up a little bit on what other states are doing, which is a great question, because California, even though we lead in many things, we've really lagged in the prison reform arena, and we are looking at other states and best practices, and that's why here in Santa Clara County you're doing a great job, and that is based on a lot of the information that has been garnered from what other states, what other jurisdictions are trying to do. The trick, though, for California is to get all of our counties to look at counties like Santa Clara and start to adopt best practices that we know are effective here, because not all counties are implementing the realignment in the same way. And if they end up by just housing more prisoners and throwing more people in jail indiscriminately, which has been the pattern in statewide before, they're going to hit the same problem that the state did, and that is hopefully then not something we have to share since decisions were made appropriately here. So the California now under realignment is joining the national movement to take a hard look at how our prison systems run, do the local community corrections partnerships in a way that are effective, and again, keeping our community safe, that's the main goal, but doing it in a way that benefits the community, that reduces recidivism, that reduces the staggering cost that we've had to face over time. I think a lot of the other questions that were asked are local decisions that the state, we're trying to make sure that we're providing resources, frameworks, incentives, but it's left to the local jurisdictions to make specific decisions about how to implement, and those are conversations that you're involved with being here today and in other meetings in San Jose, and I applaud your willingness and ability to be here today.
And I also know that here in Santa Clara County, we're very fortunate to have a very successful district attorney, Jeff Rosen. And Jeff Rosen has been very helpful in terms of working along with the law enforcement agencies here in Santa Clara County. He also has been investing in making sure that they have prosecutors at the community level. And the district attorney is a very key component of the San Jose Mayor's Gang Task Force to work with the students. So from a law enforcement perspective, Santa Clara County has both a very progressive and trying to meet the needs of the community from the sheriff's side and also from the district attorney's side.
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple of states, I want to get specifics here. The state of Utah, actually hired a gentleman who created a housing first policy for homeless in the state of Utah, almost totally eliminated the homeless population in the state of Utah, working with the Mormon Church and other organizations in the state to build housing for homeless people. And that really reduced the crime in Utah, Salt Lake City specifically. So you got to give them an A for what they've done. The state of Washington has a 30% recidivism. Now these states have different demographics, of course, than California, but the state of Washington has a combined job, career, technical education, apprenticeship programs in the prison facilities, and then transitions them into apprenticeship, career, technical education programs outside when they leave, and then also provides them with housing and health care, especially drug abuse and mental health programs. So I think if you had those kind of elements, the drug abuse, the education, and we're exploring a statewide program right now with the chancellor of the community colleges to have the programs in the prison, community college programs in the prisons to start the education and also the career technical education programs. so that when they have some skill development, they can then leave the prison and go into apprenticeship or community college programs when they leave. And of course, getting the GED throughout before they leave prison also. So that education component really reduces recidivism.
So I just want to make sure that we're not saying, our police department in San Jose is still top of the line. They are wonderful folks that are catching criminals every single day. In fact, in the Southern District, thank you. They are understaffed and quite understaffed at that, but they are pulling their weight like, nobody's business. In our division alone, we have apprehended 124 burglars in the last, at the end of May when they started recording it in our division, 124 burglars have been apprehended. And so I want to be clear, they are catching them, they're booking them, they're taking them to the end of the line, but sometimes they're turning around pretty darn quickly and are out on our streets again. And that's why I thought it was really important to have this meeting here today to discuss things like Proposition 47 and the realignment and all the other things that are happening that do influence how fast these folks get out of prison. I want to make sure that we all thank our police officers every time we see them. They're putting their lives on the line every single day. And I don't want to say that these folks are any less trained than they used to be before, because the hurdle for getting through the police academy is dramatic. I said 3,600 people applied, 19 graduated in this last round. We're trying to graduate as many as possible. And I quite frankly, I think they're excellent, the folks that we have employed under our services. And I did discuss the budget. We do have enough to hire a lot more, and we are funded for another 150 more police officers. And in the future, we're also setting aside many millions of dollars to be able to get all the way up to 1,250 within a 5-year period, according to our mayor. So we are doing that, and I'm very thankful that our police association is now in negotiations with the city. Ever since I got on city council, it's been all about, Measure B, Measure B, Measure B, and now we're finally at the table. So I'm very proud that the cooler heads are prevailing, and I'm delighted to see a move where we have our city, who's been money-strapped, financially strapped for many years, actually sitting at the table and negotiating with our unions to come to an amicable agreement. We know that they are not being paid as much as other areas, and we're trying to fix that problem, but it does take two people to tango, and I'm finally happy to see both parties at the table, and I'm delighted that things are moving in the right direction.
I would agree with what he's saying. However, I would say, we need to kind of resolve the issue. When somebody's hired in the police department, they're making a commitment in their life, and we have to protect them in terms of their disability when they have a disability. So I think that's, when you're a police officer and looking at different cities, which one you want to work for, I think to make San Jose competitive, we have to kind of have a pretty good disability program. And when I was a council, we lost 5 officers, and that many weren't in them. I remember each and every one of those officers, and I always think having disability programs for policemen and fire are very important. So I just want to say that I think that's important to resolve, and I know it will be. I know they're working on it. So.
Did you want to close, Councilmember?
Yeah, well, I just want to be clear. We do have disability programs for our police officers. If anybody gets killed or injured on the job and cannot come back to work, there's been a lot of misunderstandings about this. The definitions were changed about permanent disability, but we have changed them back through a kind of a Band-Aid, and that is one of the topics that we are discussing. And again, everything's on the table. I want to make sure that we're all going in the right direction, and we have the understanding that I think the spirit of the discussion is sincere and that things are moving in the right direction. I don't want to give anybody any false understandings that we're going to solve this thing tomorrow, but we are working on it, and these things do take time. But the police department does have my commitment to making sure that they know that every one of them is welcomed in the city of San Jose. And I want to, again, you want me to close or you want to close, Evan?
I'll just say that, as you can see, thank you very much to Councilmember's office for convening us. Obviously, what you're witnessing is democracy in action, and the debate of ideas is which is so critically important as to why you're all here, to help ensure that we also reflect your values and your priorities as well. So with that said, let me thank the Westgate Church for hosting us here today. Thank you to all the staff members from our respective offices for putting this on. If we did not get a chance to answer your question, please make sure that we have your contact information so that we will make sure that they can get that answered, and we will continue the discussions as well. We also have tables, and a lot of us will stay here for a few months if you'd like to talk to us. So thank you very much for joining us. And the video will also be on the council member's website as well.